Hello YouTube, this is Neon, and today the title of my talk is going to be the ubiquitousness of judgmentalism and other human contradictions. So, I had read a wonderful, lovely book called Different Loving by Gloria Brain. And I think it was published in the 90s. '93. I've read this book twice, I think 2.5 times. I started reading it for a third time and I just stopped. I will read it again. This book is about BDSM. Okay? It's about BDSM, bondage, discipline, sadomasochism. That's what it's about. So, I gotta blow my nose. You wanna see? So, one of the first things that Miss Brain talks about, I don't know if it's Brahm or Brain. It's spelled Brain, but it could be Brahm. I don't know. One of the first things she talks about is that while on the one hand, society as a whole tends to discriminate against BDSM or sadomasochism. Those people are sick, those people are disgusting, and they judge them in this really harsh way. As Kennedy Montgomery said, and I think I'm quoting her correctly, she said, many times people look at things that they do not understand and they come up with harsh conclusions. And so society tends to judge people who are into BDSM. I'm one of them. Another thing that Gloria Brain talks about in this book is that within the community, the BDSM community, whatever that means, let's say for example the clubs and the social gatherings, you have different groups of people within the BDSM community who are judgmental against people who are into other forms of dominance and submission. There's people who are exclusively into spankings, others into whippings, and it could be a combination of that. There's ABDL folks, adult baby diaper lovers, I believe is what that stands for. So there's many different forms and expressions of dominance and submission. Most of these do involve some kind of sexual aspect as well, but not all of them. I don't want to get on a sidetrack and explain them, but there's many different forms of dominance and submission. Some of these properly fit under that umbrella, and some of them perhaps don't, and the practitioners will say, well, this is not sexual, and some may say this is not dominance and submission, or BDSM, it's just a hobby, or it's just a fetish. The semantics can vary greatly. I almost forgot my point. My point is that people who are, for example, into water sports, something that's generally very safe, they may be judgmental against somebody who's into a lot of heavy submission, or not submission, bondage. The people who are heavily into bondage, they may be judgmental against people like myself who are into head trips. Head trips, mind Fs. You know what the F stands for. It's also known as psychodrama. It's known as taboo mental games. Within that, there's different expressions and different ways of practicing my specialty of domination. And it's also my favorite when it comes to being dominated. I really enjoy mind Fs as well, but I also enjoy a little more physical domination as well as bondage. I enjoy that more as a sub. As a dom, my main focus, my main interest is psychological domination. So people within the community of dominance and submission is the politically correct term for sadomasochism, or BDSM, which stands for bondage, discipline, sadomasochism. So you have people within the community that are judgmental against people who are practitioners of a different form of dominant submission. Quite a contradiction, because that same person will consider that their form of dominance and submission is normal and is healthy, and no one should be judging them. And they want to play like they're the martyr, like we all do. We all want to be the martyr. We want to say, they're judging me because I'm into this particular safe, sane, and consensual form of sexuality, form of dominance and submission, form of BDSM, and it's fun and it's legal and nobody can do anything about it. They shouldn't be judging me. I'm a martyr. And yet that same person, let's say they're really heavily into bondage, they may judge the people who are into water sports. They may say, oh, they're into water sports, that's disgusting, that grosses me out. And they'll be, on the one hand, judgmental against people who are into something that they're not into and therefore do not understand. And yet they'll also want to be the martyr because the general public will condemn them. Why do you want to be bound and handcuffed and gagged and before you have sex? That makes no sense. Both men and women are really into this. You'll find women and men practitioners of all forms of dominance and submission, by the way. So I find that to be a huge, huge contradiction. You'll find, of course, you're going to find heterosexual practitioners who are judgmental against gay practitioners. You'll find gay practitioners in their own way that are judgmental against transgender practitioners. One of the most common things I've heard by gay men is that I like men, so why would I want to be with a man who dresses like a woman? If I was straight, I'd want to be with a woman. I'm gay though, I like men. It's basically their way of saying they don't like transgender women. I'm not categorically saying all gay men are like this, but I've heard many say this, and if it wasn't for the fact that there's some very dear people to me who are transgender, I would probably be discriminatory as well. I'm no different. Now, because this book does such a great job of educating, I began to immediately, do a little reverse psychology that Miss Brain said, and try not to judge other people that are into forms of dominance and submission that I'm not into, and that I don't understand because I don't practice them, or have practiced them very little. As a result, I've been able to take head trips, my form of domination, and expand. I've done puppy play, I've done water sports, I've done bondage, I've done spankings. As a submissive, when I'm not interested in being submissive now, but I've been submissive. I've really enjoyed spankings big time. Don't ask me to explain why, but very pleasurable. A different kind of way of enjoying pleasure for people who were into that. So she was very helpful in that respect, letting me know, don't discriminate against people who are into different forms of domination than you, and yet at the same time want to be a martyr because the general public is going to discriminate against you as well as everybody else. Very interesting, this whole contradiction that involved in us being a martyr, but then also being judgmental against other people. I've had this happen. There's a guy who, according to his profile, which I've seen his profile on 2 different websites, he's very much a dom and practices being a sub as well. Being a sub makes you a better dom, and then occasionally doming makes you a better sub. So his specialty was bondage, and he could use ropes, he would use latex and different things to bind people and then to stimulate them in some way. And he talked to me, he's like, well, what is this mental dominance? What is this psychodrama? And I explained it to him, and he basically said, because he wanted me to dom him at one point, he basically said, and by the way, we talked on the phone, and he said, oh, that sounds weird, I'm not into that. Why would I want someone to do that to me? And he judged it in a negative way and decided he didn't want me to dom him as part of his effort of becoming a better dom. So he kind of stuck to what he knew, and that's fine. But we need to stop judging and being judgmental when people aren't breaking the law. Now, within the gay world, and I'm going to say strictly gay men, which is what I am, we're just as judgmental. Many of us can be judgmental against transgender women, against transgender men. We can be judgmental within the gay BDSM world, where we as gay people, because this guy I was talking about obviously was another gay man, we can be judgmental against people within the gay BDSM world who are practitioners of other forms of BDSM. It's really amazing the contradiction and the need that we have to judge other people so that we can feel good about ourselves. We need to be judgmental and put someone else down. Ooh, they're sick, that's gross, that's disgusting. But then at the same time, we need to be martyrs. We need to say, that person is judging me even though I've done nothing wrong. We all want to play the martyr. I still do that. I still play the martyr. Someone criticizes me and I say, well, they did that because they were having a bad day, or they did that because they didn't like the way I was dressed, or they did that because they are racist. They might be African American. I'm like, well, they did that because they don't like black people. You know, they did it for something, they judged me or they criticized me, and I didn't deserve to be criticized. So therefore they did it for no reason at all, and I'm now a martyr. We all want to be a martyr. I'm working on that. And I'm working on saying, hey, they just judged me. They just told me I was a jerk or I did something wrong. And me trying to entertain the idea that maybe they're right. Maybe I need to look at this, and maybe this needs to be something that I continue to work on over time to be a better person. But these are two of the big, oh my gosh, I can't leave this one out. So, I was talking to a transgender woman one time. Now, transgender women, they experience so much discrimination, bigotry, judgmentalism, it's ridiculous. Amazing. And yet, to the extent that I've gotten to know transgender women, they seem to me to be very accepting of others. Very accepting. Now, I was explaining to one transgender woman about a gender nonconformist, which are different. I'm not going to try to define gender nonconformist in any great detail because I'm not well versed in gender nonconformity. But what one gender nonconformist told me was that we don't see ourselves as male or female. We don't identify as one or the other. You have people who are intersex who literally have both male and female parts, internally and externally. They can have any combination of both. They may have an X and a Y chromosome. But this is more in the heart and mind of the person. And I can relate in that I suffer from gender dysphoria. But as I was explaining to this transgender woman, to this trans woman, to this transgender lady, that one of the things that he would do is he would wear men's clothes and he would wear a dress over his men's clothes. So he would dress both as a woman and a man at the same time. And she said, huh? What? What's that? And she says, oh, I get it, he's confused. So here's a transgender woman who gets judged and probably mistreated. She's a Latina, so I know that statistically there's a 50% chance she'll be assaulted for no reason at all because she's a transgender woman. No different than lynching someone because they're African American. And yet she made a negative judgment against someone who's gender nonconformist. We look at things we don't understand and we come up with harsh conclusions. And here's a transgender woman who's been judged left and right, yet is willing to judge someone who's different than she is. We as human beings are full of contradictions. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, comment, commercials. Do one or more of those things. Thank you. Best wishes.